If you have been looking to develop a savings plan that will become the catalyst for launching you into financial freedom, then this is where you're going to want to start. I am giving you step-by-step action items that will be so easy, it'll blow you away. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, I'm Ashley Janelle, and I have been able to save and invest multiple six figures from all of the methods that we are going to talk about today. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. But before we do, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you are not subscribed already. I don't want you to miss any of the amazing videos that I have coming up for you guys. And also, go ahead and give the video a like. It helps me, helps the algorithm. So with that, now let's go ahead and get into it. So before we get started, I want to give a disclaimer that says that I am not a financial advisor. I am not a financial advisor. I am giving you tips that I have used and processes that I have implemented that have been beneficial for me and enabled me to save multiple six figures. So I am giving you my keys to success. Any questions that you guys have, please go ahead and leave those in the comments. If I say I would talk to a financial advisor about that, don't be shocked. Because I also know my limitations. But in terms of processes and things like that, methods, actually getting us in the habit and in the mindset of saving and what it can do for you and how it can free you, essentially, that's what we're here to talk about today. So the first step of this process is very, very important. It's probably the most important step, and that is figuring out your why. Now, this is very important because your why might be totally different than somebody else's why, but you want to get to the crux of why did you click on this video? There was something that drove you to click on this video. You want to develop a savings plan. Savings sounds interesting to you. Savings, what will it do for you? These are the questions that you want to be able to answer. What will saving allow you to be able to do? What are some of the things that you may not be able to do now that saving and or investing will now allow you to be able to do? Will saving allow you to put money towards a down payment on a home or perhaps a down payment on a car? Are you saving to invest? An emergency fund? Really being able to narrow down why you are saving and why it is important for you to be able to save. And I think this last part is the most important part. What are you going to be able to do now that you have saved your money that you are not able to do today? That is really, really important. So that's the first step, figuring out your why. Go ahead, write that down. You might have multiple whys. You might have 2, 3, 4 whys, and that's great. But we want to make sure that we document this, and that's going to be really, really important as we continue throughout this process. So now that we have identified what our why is and why we are saving, now we want to actually set some sort of a savings goal. You've probably heard about savings goals before. And one question that you might have is, well, how do I come up with my savings goal? Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. I would say, first of all, it depends on what it is that you are saving for. Maybe you are looking to purchase a home and you would like to be able to save in order to put money towards a down payment on a home. Maybe going ahead and getting pre-qualified and trying to understand, okay, how much would I actually have to put down on a home that costs this much? How much will my monthly payment be? Things like that will really give you a clear goal to actually work towards. Maybe it's something like an emergency fund and you've identified the amount of money that you feel that you need for, let's say, 6 months. If, let's say, you got laid off today and you needed to cover your bills and all of your responsibilities for 6 months, go ahead and add that up, and that is how you can come up with your emergency fund. I would also add a little to that as well because things come up, so you always want to have a cushion, but that is how you are going to actually identify your savings goal. Coming up with the savings goal is not really to say this is, a hard number that I'm going to have towards putting down a home, because obviously things can fluctuate. Prices of homes can go up and go down. We have interest rates. There are all these kinds of things that can contribute to how much money you might actually need. That's why I always like to say, okay, figure out a ballpark range and add a cushion onto that depending on, what it is. But in order to get started with this exercise, we really want to make sure that we are clearly identifying our why And then from there, coming up with what our savings goal is going to be. When we talk about our savings goals, one thing that's really important to remember is that you could have multiple reasons that you are wanting to save. So when we go back to our why, let's say that you are wanting to save for an emergency fund and you're also interested in purchasing a home. I would say that those are two separate, however you want to break them down, whether they're separate accounts, but those are two separate numbers. So I would always make sure that I am keeping my eye on those two numbers. I mean, one thing that you could do just to make it easy is to have two different accounts. That way, you have X amount of dollars that you're looking to put into this account and X amount of dollars that you're looking to put into this account. And it's very, very cut and dry. That's another thing that's really important is, okay, once we actually start to get down into breaking down how much money we're going to allocate towards our savings goal, if you have more than one, reasons that you're trying to save or more than one place that you're going to be allocating money, it's very, very important to make sure early that you can separate the two very easily. So I've kind of given the examples already of maybe purchasing a home or purchasing a car, or just wanting to have sort of an emergency fund. A couple of other, reasons or goals that you can be saving for could be things like an investment account. Maybe you are really wanting to get into investments or stocks and things like that, but you want to actually have money set aside to be able to throw into the stock market or to make investments. That could be, in its own account. We talked about emergency funds. The other thing that we did not talk about was just a general savings. So there's a difference between an emergency fund and your actual savings account. Your emergency fund is obviously just for emergencies, and that's also very important to identify that this is not something that you are going to, go into when you need money for, Beyonce tickets because you don't have it in your checking account. Your emergency fund should stay your emergency fund. Your general savings account is for things like what I just mentioned. Maybe you don't have the money in your checking, but you really need to do something. You really need to, get a plane ticket to go somewhere and you don't have the money, in your checking, don't want to use a credit card, and you you're okay with pulling that money out of your savings account because that's kind of your money to save and kind of play with. However you want to do that, totally up to you. But those are just some additional goals in savings, kind of reasons that you might have or want. So the next step, I think we talked about this a little bit already, but just making sure that you have separate accounts for everything. It's very difficult when you throw everything into one account to actually see, what's for my investments and what's for my general savings and what's for, my emergency fund. It's very, very easy to just have different separate accounts for each reasoning. So as we move forward in this process, one of the next things that you're gonna naturally want to think about is there a day or a date or a timeline that I am looking to have this money saved by? That's going to be really important because that's going to obviously tell you how aggressive you need to become with your savings. And it's always good to write these things down. This is my savings goal for this particular account, and this is when I would like to see this account fully flourish by. Okay, that's really, really important. Also for accountability, you can also put kind of, maybe arbitrary dates on there as well. But like, let's say that you are wanting to really get serious about building up your emergency fund and you say, you know what? I don't have an emergency fund and I feel very uncomfortable about that. That is where I'm going to focus my savings efforts, and I want to have my emergency fund built up the way that I would like to see it built up within the next 8 months. I just made that up, but 8 months. So that way you can have something written down that you can be working towards, and you can understand why having your savings account, your emergency savings account built up in the next 8 months is going to be very, very beneficial for you. So the next natural step is to figure out, okay, where am I going to actually store all of my money? Where am I going to keep these things? And again, I will just say that the recommendations that I am about to give are purely recommendations. They are recommendations that you can go ahead and Google. I implore you to Google them, find out more information about them, get comfortable with them, see what feels right for you, reach out to your bank, financial advisors, and things like that. But let's go ahead and get into the different places where you can actually put your money. The first and kind of obvious place to put your money is going going to be just at your traditional bank. Going and opening up a savings account, an account where you're not necessarily going to be continuously taking from as you would a checking account. You're not going to get too much interest on that savings account, but it's okay because it is just kind of that. It's just a savings account. You're not going to be storing a ton of money in there traditionally. The next type of savings account is going to be what's called a high yield savings account. So the difference between a high yield savings account and a traditional savings account is that you are going to earn more interest using a high yield savings account versus using a traditional savings account. Sometimes I think it can be up to like 17 times more interest than you would at your traditional bank. And again, I would do some digging online about high yield savings accounts. They are typically offered by online banks. So again, go ahead and do your research, but high yield savings account is also another really great option. And then lastly, there's also what's called a money market account. And I would go ahead and do my research on those three options. There are more out there, but again, I wanted to just choose a few just to kind of get your wheels spinning, get you thinking about the different options that you have and knowing that you have different options. I think that's the biggest part of this step, is knowing that you don't have to just open up a savings account at your local bank, at your, wherever you're currently banking. That's not your only option. And I think that when we know that we have options and we know that we have other places to put our money that might work for us a little bit better in the long run, that's going to be the key. So the next step is where we actually get into the fun part. We actually can break down the numbers and get into, assessing how much are we actually going to be putting away now that we know that we understand why we need to save and invest. We have chosen our different options to saving and investing. Now it is time to actually assess the numbers. So we're going to go ahead and actually jump into an example. I have put together a very easy example, something with easy, raw numbers for us to be able to follow. And really what I want you to understand is the concept and how we are thinking about what we're spending versus what we're putting away. So in this scenario, you are making $3,000 a month. I know a lot of you probably get paid bi-weekly. Maybe some of you are doing contract work and you're freelancing and things like that. But we are talking just a month to make it easy, make it simple. Let's make it plain. We are talking about you making $3,000 take home at the end of each month. So now let's say that for your rent or your mortgage, your housing, that is $1,100. Let's just say that leaves you with $1,900 left. So after you've paid your housing, just the housing, not the bills, you are left with $1,900. So now, how does that actually break down? So let's say that after your bills, after your groceries, after your entertainment for the month, and that's also really important to actually break down too, like what is entertainment? Anything that you do that is entertaining. It's not bills, it's not necessarily food, like it's not groceries. Groceries are like what you actually go to the store, buy and put in your refrigerator, put in your pantry. Those are groceries. If you are going out to eat, that is entertainment. If you are going to Topgolf to go golfing with your friends, that's entertainment. If you are traveling, that is entertainment. You want to be thinking about that. Okay, I need to book a hotel, or I need to book a flight, or I need to get a rental car. I need to have spending money. I know that there are these pairs of shoes that I want to buy, next month or this month, or, whatever month that we're kind of looking to actually save. You want to buy a pair of shoes, or you want to go shopping. You want to budget that, estimate that, give yourself, money for entertainment, and you are going to put that aside along with your bills and your groceries. So let's say after your bills, your groceries, and your entertainment, you are left with $400. Now, I want you to not get confused. This is not to say that you have put all of your money towards your bills and all of your money towards your groceries and all of your money towards your entertainment. So the way that I like to think about entertainment is also not just money that is going to be allocated towards something that you already know about. So like I said, let's say you are going on a trip and you know that there is a certain amount of money that you're going to spend on the trip. Or let's say that you are going to, you're going to go to dinner at least a couple of times this month. And so you put away for that. Entertainment should also just be regular spending money. So like after I have paid my bills, my mortgage, my rent, whatever, I want to leave money in my account, in my checking account, or give myself cash, or however you do it. I want to have money to be able to just spending money, i.e. entertainment. So let's say that after all of that, you are left with $400. So you give yourself money for the month and you say, this is the amount of money that I am going to spend on entertainment. And after that, let's say you are left with $400. I think that even just starting to break down our finances might be eye-opening enough, because you might look at your finances from the previous month and say, okay, subtract your housing, subtract all of your bills, subtract, any money for groceries, all the money that you spent on groceries that month, and then go ahead and look at your entertainment. And then I would go ahead and I would look at those miscellaneous charges. Like, what did you purchase that was just totally unnecessary? Like, I didn't have to get that Uber Eats. I was just being lazy. Or I didn't have to take that Uber. I was just being lazy. Or, I totally, took this money and just did whatever with it. Like, I want us to really start to look at our finances, look at our bank statements, and really understand the patterns that we have and just understand what's going on. Sometimes when we look at our account and we see that we have money to spend, we spend it instead of allocating out what we need to save first. So now let's keep going, and let's say that we have $400 that is unaccounted for. You're going to take that $400 and that is now going to become what you are going to save for that month. So it's really important to start to do this every month. Again, I like to look at the entire month because I think it's easier to work with. If you want to break this down into bi-weekly because that's how you get paid, totally fine. But you want to be able to look at this, to start looking at this month over month. And it's important to know that what you did or what you're doing this month might change for next month. So if you have $400 kind of left over from this month, you may not necessarily have that next month, or next month you may have $500 or $600. It just depends on, how you were allocating your money for that particular month. In doing these exercises of actually breaking down our finances, and again, it becomes something that you will just start to do. Pay all of your bills first. Essentially, you get paid, you pay all of your bills, and whatever is left over, you give yourself, you kind of project for the month, give yourself entertainment money, and the rest of it goes into your savings. And when you start to do this exercise over and over, number one, you won't have to actually sit down with your bank statements or, look at a spreadsheet unless you just want to. But what actually starts to happen is it just starts to become something that you do, and you are getting yourself into the habit of saving. You should also try to make it a point to try to save around the same amount every month. So like I said, you will start to see patterns in how much money you have kind of left over. Again, this will fluctuate, but you want to try to start to save about the same amount each month. This is really important when it comes to your projections. So again, like we were talking about, we have savings goals, and then we also might have dates that we want to have money saved by. This is going to help you actually project those numbers when you can say, okay, I should have about $350 to $400 to save every month. And that is a real sweet spot for me because that is going to allow me to save X amount of dollars by this time. And let's say that you have a month where for some reason you have $50 that is all that you can save. You can look at that one of two ways. You can say, well, I had a lot going on this month, so $50, if that's all that I was able to contribute to my savings accounts, then that's fine. Or you can look at it and say, okay, I only have $50 to spare. What happened with the rest of the $350 or the rest of the $300? Do you see what I'm saying? And then you start to become accountable for what is going on with your finances. You start to become the manager of your finances, which is what we really should be doing. But a lot of times, because we're just swiping or we're just tapping, we're not consciously, thinking about how much money is actually leaving out. We'll talk about subscriptions in a minute as well, but you want to make sure that you are keeping up and you know where all of your money is going. So typically when we're talking about developing a savings plan, that kind of indicates that we are starting something new. Saving is something that is new for us, which is great. These are all great things. But typically a lot of times when we are trying to save and we have a goal, which is why we set savings goals and we have dates that we want to, save by as well, typically there are some kind of lifestyle changes that need to happen. And what I will just say is that I don't want you to try to, unless you want to, I don't want you to try to break your back trying to save to the point where you are no longer enjoying the things that you have or the fruits of your labor. Now, listen, if you want to go super hard on saving and you are going to cut out, entertainment and going out and things like that, and you want to do that for 6 months or a year, I totally applaud it, because I get it. We have goals, we have, projected dates, and we have targets that we want to hit. I totally get that. But I also just want you to remember to be gentle with yourself during this process, especially beginning this process. I want you to remember that this is something new. And typically when we start something new, there are going to be all sorts of growing pains that we're going to have. So just go ahead and remember that. Jot that down to be easy on yourself. But I want you to remember, are there lifestyle changes that we need to make? Are you someone who goes out to eat with your friends and you have a date, you guys go out to eat every Friday? Is that something that you might be able to, cut back on a little bit? We have all sorts of subscriptions that we are all subscribed to that we don't even think about, because that is the beauty of subscriptions. They are convenient for us, and they are also convenient for companies, because that just comes out of our accounts every month and no one really bats an eye. So really starting to look at those recurring charges that are on your accounts. How many times you go to Starbucks versus how many times you could have just made that coffee at home. Thinking about things like that are going to be instrumental. A lot of times we don't think that it actually equates to, a large number, but you will really be surprised. So take a look at that when you're taking a look at your finances as well. So now let's go ahead and actually get into the tips that I have for you guys. The first tip is going to be set up automatic transfers. So anytime that you can automate the funds that are going from one account to another, or going from your employer to your accounts, you mitigate so many different things. Having to transfer money physically is not a bad thing. It doesn't take a ton of time. But if you can set it up to where a small part of your check, or however you want to set it up, goes, right into your savings account, it is going to be that much easier for you. You're also not really going to miss that money, because you will start to not really see it. So that's one of the tips that I have for you guys, is to set up automatic transfers. So the next tip is something that we've talked about just a little bit, but starting small. You always have the option of increasing the amount of money that you want to put into various accounts. There is nothing wrong with starting small. So let's say, like in our example, we had $400 left over at the end of the month that we put into our savings. If $400 doesn't feel right to you, or you feel like you might need a little bit more cushion for the month as you are just getting started, go ahead and make it $300. You don't have to go all in, because one of the beauties of saving is that you can always increase or decrease. The goal is to, continue to increase as we, hopefully, make more money and, different things, have different streams of income and things like that. You can always go up. But in order to get started and to feel right about getting started, and to make it a habit and something that you are not going to just quit because you feel like you're missing money or something like that, start small. The next tip is to keep your savings goal front of mind. One of the ways that I have seen people do this is by talking about it with other people. I used to do this as well. I had friends that were on the same journey. We were wanting to, do similar things, and we had similar aspirations. And so we would talk about our savings goals. And it would be, conversations that would come up naturally. We would check in on each other. So having accountability is really good too. But even if you don't have someone, because finances are personal, and maybe you don't don't have someone that you actually want to share this with, make it something that you check in on yourself to make sure that you're actually doing. Set reminders to actually review. I mean, you should be reviewing your finances every month per this plan that we're talking about, but you might get to the point where you're not actually looking at your savings every month or your statements every month, and you're kind of just the money's going in there automatically. But revisit it, keep it front of mind, revisit your why. Okay, if you're trying to buy a home, one of the things that a lot of people like to do is to shop for homes online and just look at things that they would really like to buy. Vision boards are really nice for this. Just remember why you are saving in the first place. Keeping that front of mind is going to be very, very important. My next tip is actually a very important one, and it is all around, what happens if you don't have the money to save or to invest. You've done this plan that we've talked about, and you say, you know what, I just can't see it. I can't see myself taking money from, maybe my bills or maybe my entertainment or my spending money, and I just don't know where this money is going to come from. One of the things that I would really implore you to do, if you are not already, is to look at side hustles. Side hustles are going to be very important to generating and building wealth. Side hustles, i.e. multiple streams of income, are going to be very, very important, not just for the you now that is just starting on this savings, starting to develop this savings plan, but for the you down the road when you have the things that you're actually wanting to save for today, and you're on to the next things. You're on to saving for, things like saving more for retirement, or maybe you have kids and you're wanting to, save for their college and education and things like that. Having multiple streams of income, aka side hustles, is going to be something that you're going to want to take a look at. And I would not look at side hustles as a today thing. Like I said, side hustles, multiple streams of income, however you want to see it, break it down, it is going to be something that is going to stay with you. Your multiple streams of income or your side hustle might change, but the fact that you have multiple streams of income should never change. So taking a look online and really starting to understand, what else can I do? Investing your money is good, but investments are investments. They're not something that you're going to see a return on immediately. So having those multiple streams of income that is coming in is going to be very, very important in helping you, do all sorts of things, but most importantly, saving and investing. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I hope that this spoke to you in more ways than one. I hope that you took some notes. I really want to hear about your savings goals, your savings plans. You don't have to tell me exactly how much you're looking to save, but tell me what from today's video you actually are going to take with you. I'm really interested to hear. I am here to answer any questions that you guys have. And remember, there are a ton of financial advisors all around you, and the options are really endless. I've talked about this in another video, but even just becoming financially literate is very, very important. Things like listening to financial podcasts and just listening, if nothing else, for the terminology. They may say something that you don't understand and you go and you Google it. That is very important. It helps it helps us build up this muscle for becoming financially literate, and helps us to just understand things so that we understand more about our money, how it can work for us, economy, things like that. So I really hope that this video spoke to someone. If it did, let me know, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.